Steve Zanardo here with Remax West Zanardo Associates. Just a real quick update on the market. Current inventory, we're at 13,654 units, so we're up about 300 units since last week. Sales are down 17%. We're at 657 units sold in the last 7 days. Last week was 791 units, which brings us 17% down. This has been pretty much steady. I mean, we've had this north of 13,000 units for quite some time now. Sales are between 600 and 800 units per week that are being sold, so this is pretty normal right now. What we're hoping for, obviously, is the going into the winter months, inventory tightens up further and hopefully give our sellers a better opportunity to sell. The only problem is October 25th, we have another Bank of Canada meeting. Tiff Macklem is set to do another rate increase for the Bank of Canada. And, the last rate increase was 50 basis points. That we follow America and do 75 basis points, or we do a full percent, because inflation's still quite high. I know there's big banks trying to leverage the Governor General to kind of not increase rates further, but ultimately they're going to bomb it. They're going to have to hammer it down again because inflation's quite high. If you kind of look at, I'm a little bit of a nerd, and I screenshot all the Bank of Canada, or actually TD, their bank rates, or the mortgage rates rather, because what happens, you can't Google these after. You can't find what the rate was in April or March, whatever it is. So I kind of screen save every month when there's some changes. If you kind of look at September, our 5-year closed mortgage is 5.34%. Bank of Canada did that 50 basis point increase, and now October, this is October 17th today, we're at 5.54%. So 20 basis points higher, and the prime stayed the same at 5.6%. So remember, any buyer that's got to get a mortgage has to do a stress test. So it's 200 basis points over that set amount. So if the amount was 5.54%, you'd have to qualify for a 7.5% mortgage, which is insane in our era, because you talk to some people that are not in tune with the market, or had mortgages in the yesteryears, and not compared to us and like our age, our general mortgage amounts are a lot different, let's say, than the yesteryears. I had a conversation with another colleague, obviously elder than myself, and talking about how these are normal. We had these rates in the past, and so we're all good. And it's like, yeah, but you bought a house for like $200,000, or let's say a full detach under $300K, let's say in the mid 90s and early 90s, and yeah, you had a 7-12, a 7 to 10% rate or whatever it was, but ultimately your mortgage amount was probably maybe $150,000, compared to our generation, where we have no choice but to get large mortgages. Not like our choice. I would imagine if we all had an opportunity to say we'd like to have a less of a mortgage, we'd all probably jump on that train. But ultimately, we're all forced to have larger or substantially larger mortgage loans than almost the world. So when you're carrying a $1 million mortgage on a townhouse, and now the rate goes up to 7% or 5.5%. I mean, this is traumatizing for anybody that's holding that kind of mortgage, specifically on a house of that size. So that's pretty much it. And so this obviously can affect us more going further with our sellers, not having an opportunity to have buyers that can afford their properties, which is obviously going to bring prices down even further. What scares me the most, and I'll pull this onto the screen here, is this. And I've been talking with my team about this, and there's a lot of colleagues and professionals now looking at all the factors. I drive by a site every day on Pine Valley and Tesson Road. It's in Kleinburg. These are luxury homes. They're going to be $2.5 million plus, or let's say $2.2 million plus every house there. These were purchased about 2 years ago, when the market was still, it was hot, but not as hot as the height of this market this year. But also the rates were so much different. They were so much lower, let's say a year and a half to 2 years ago. And people are forgetting about these people that are locked into this commodity that lost so much value. So the appreciation is down substantially, and the rates have gone up. It's a perfect combination for a disaster. And I was reading this article. This was just published the 12th of October, so last week. And I've been looking at this, and I'm going to follow basically builders, because once you see builders start stacking lock boxes on doors and there's nobody living in there, there's an issue on closing. And we had this, I followed this in New Kleinburg near our office, where it was basically, driving down one street where the houses were $2.5 million at one point. but there was 11 lock boxes at a 17 house on the street. So there's obviously a problem with closing, and that builder had to basically renege on the closing. And to be honest, we had a buyer that purchased through this one builder in the area. I don't want to, name the builder, but ultimately they negotiated my clients negotiated about $450,000 off the original agreed upon price, and that builder just wanted it out of his hair. He's still making a pretty decent profit, and he's got one off the books. So that's pretty much what we could see happening, and this is going to put a lot of pressure on builders too, with their leverage on specifically trying to develop different sites and how much money they got into it. And if buyers are not closing, that roll up of that cash to pay off the trades, developing new properties for them is going to be an issue. It's going to be a huge backlog, and a lot of people are not going to get paid, especially trades. If you're a contractor, like a masonry contractor or a framer contractor, these are going to be the last people to get paid going forward. And this is where we saw in the 80s where a lot of companies, small business owners that went bankrupt, or were small, they were large at the time, millionaires, and at the end they couldn't hold it together because ultimately the builders weren't paying. So that's obviously risk there. But let's just read a little bit of this article. It says, over the course of the pandemic, many people have experienced changes in their finances. Interest rates have increased substantially, and buyers are required to pass a stress test at much higher levels, she said. This means that some buyers may no longer qualify for the mortgages they would have been approved for just a few years ago. This is interesting. The lender who you signed up with when you purchased the home does not actually have to fulfill that obligation. If there has been a substantial material change in your income, which happened, or let's say property value, in a number of other number of factors, then they don't have to qualify, or they don't have to agree to the set price or loan in the past. And if there's, I would imagine some banks will hopefully agree to this, but a lot of them will probably back out of it. So that was the original stress test at 5.25%. But look at this. People that will be affected, this is just logic. Over-leveraged investor, basically someone that bought a few of these properties hoping when they take possession that they're going to flip it and make a profit. Number one factor. Number two, employment status. Obviously income changed. This is number three is buyers who barely pass a stress test to begin with, so they were over leveraged to begin with when they purchase. They will be impacted because they'll no longer be able to afford the mortgage because they're already at the brink of 5.25%. Imagine at 7.5%. It's not going to happen. And the last group is is basically the people that purchase pre-construction home and had the intent to sell their current home. So basically, they bought a commodity. This is very logical. They bought a commodity that is held at the current rate, and then they're hedging off their property in order to close the new property. So now, if this locked in at a high commodity rate or pricing rather, and this commodity, they're hoping that at some point, because the market was coming up in this trend, that it'll come maybe at parity and they can kind of trade houses and beat the system. But what happens is it's going down this way. So now there's a further gap with their mortgage and the amount of their affordability. So those are definitely three people at 3 or 4 different scenarios that are at risk. But that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, guys, always reach out. We're here for you. We're actually going to set up some new programs going forward. Me, Mike, and Elisa, our team, had a conversation this morning just talking about some sort of relief going forward for clients, seeing if there's affordability issues, maybe we can help out. But I think we're still too fresh for that right now, but we are looking into that to have some sort of set program going forward. Pretty much it, guys. Have an amazing day. We'll talk soon. Ciao.